Yes, this will be a special episode. Not because we will be speaking English here, but because we have the legendary basketball coach in our studio today, Ron Billingslea. Welcome, Coach Ron.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you, Coach?
I'm good, thank you. It's a sunny day outside in Trondheim, so hey, what's not to be happy about?
And we are sitting here in a cave. But I start with a tough question first. We're going to talk about your career as a player, as a coach, but I start with a tough one first. What are you most proud of or most happy with when it comes to your career?
Ooh, there's so many positive experiences. That's a tough one to actually pin down, but maybe it comes down to my last game as a coach. I have a very special place in my heart for the Sverresborg U19 team that won the NM. And that was the game that ended my coaching career. So I walked away from being a coach with the present that my players gave me winning the national championship. So I think that's the last memory. That's the lasting memory, you might say.
And that's a great achievement with a big, young, nice generation of players.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things as far as, you're both ballers yourself, so you understand basketball has a certain a spirit to it. You know, one generation gives to the next. When I was growing up, I look back on the senior players that took an interest in me and my development. In fact, I remember very fondly like an old pro, Alonzo Lewis was his name, who I was playing on the pro players and college players, university players were playing on one court, and then the younger kids, high school kids, were playing on the side court, and that's where I was playing. And this old pro came up to me and says, "If you want to be good, you go play over there." And I was like, "Whoa, like, will they let me play?" And he said, "If you want to, you go over there." So that was something where he gave to me and inspired me to go over and be competitive. So I think an older generation giving to the younger generation is part of the spirit of the game. So.
But like we said in the beginning, we are very lucky to have you here. So we would like to go all the way to the beginning. You were born in 1950 in Philadelphia, am I right?
1950, yeah, way back then.
Yeah, but you are still relevant today, and that's not a small achievement. That's quite a big achievement.
Yeah, well, I think it's, again, I consider myself to have been blessed to be able to work in an occupation that's, some people say, oh, that's not work, but it's to be able to work in a profession where you enjoy it. So I think that's part of the longevity of it, is that it never gets boring. There's always the next season. There's always the preparation. And of course, when you get the results, then that kind of motivates you to continue, and the players as well, of course. So it's been a long career that I think that, I've been quite fortunate to have that as a way to make a living.
But describe your early years in Philadelphia. How was it growing up in the 50s in Philly?
The 1950s, huh? 1950s. Boy, that's like another century. That's a century ago, right? Well, Philadelphia is a very special place because it has a very rich basketball culture. And I'm just a small part of that culture, but Philadelphia is a basketball town, okay? And a lot of great players came out of Philadelphia, and it's a lot of tradition. So I can remember when I first picked up a basketball, it was probably around, I think, 11, 12 years old when I went down to the local park. And, my brother that took me down there, my older brother. and we had these old, they were metal backboards with the holes in them. The metal, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So it can't be destroyed so easy.
and the rims had chains.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll never forget the sound of like when you made a bucket with a nice arc on it, then you would get that sound like a chink, 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 like ringing them up. So that was the first experience, like, oh, that's fun, putting the ball in the basket. But no, I started at about 10, 11 years old, and then I played grade school basketball. And then, of course, went on to high school, played high school ball, and then went on and played at the University of Pennsylvania and at that level. And then I played semi-pro. But I was fortunate in that my coach at Penn, Dick Harder, became a head coach at the University of Oregon, so that when I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, I went directly into being a full-time paid assistant coach. So that, looking back at it, gave me the opportunity not just to be a former player, but also a former player who also coached at the Division I level. And then that was how I was able to market myself going overseas. I just wasn't a player and I just wasn't a coach. So I actually came over in 1980 to Finland as a player coach, and that was the beginning of my professional career.
But in University of Pennsylvania, didn't you have Chuck Daly as coach?
Yes, I did. Actually, two coaches. My first coach was Dick Harder. But let me back up a second about high school.
Yeah.
One thing, because this is actually one of my best memories, is that my teammates and I, we were all, we play all summer on the playground, and we had a goal to make the league playoffs, which were held at the Palestra, which is like a magical arena. Anybody in American basketball knows about the Palestra in Philadelphia. And it's like a arena that was, it's one of the oldest arenas in America, built in like 1923 or 1925. And, all I can say is that was our dream, that was our goal, and we accomplished that. So that was the first, like, say, taste of really, being in a professional arena with my high school teammates. And we got knocked out in the semifinal, but just getting there was the big thing. But back to your question, yeah, Chuck Daly was my first college coach. Was at that level was Dick Harder, who also went into the pros. He was assistant at Indiana or with Larry Bird, and then Chuck Daly was my coach my senior year. Chuck Daly, great coach.
Yeah, he had many achievements.
But you had quite a start in University of Pennsylvania. Your freshman year, you didn't lose a game. You won all the games.
Yeah, we were 21-0. Our coach, Digger Phelps, he's also a big name in American basketball. He pushed us to perfection, you could say. Digger had a very... what can I say? He's old school. I remember one time we were not performing up to his expectations in the first half, and we went into the locker room at halftime, and he started out like, you guys basically suck. I want each one of you to go into the bathroom and look in the mirror and ask yourself if you've given 100%. And each player had to get up and go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and you couldn't help it. You looked in the mirror and started smiling. And then you had to wipe the smile off your face and go back in and sit down. The next guy would go in. And then after the game, we all started comparing notes like, yo, what did you do when you went into the bathroom? I just started breaking out laughing. We all said the same thing, but that was Digger. We were 21-0. We were 21-0, and my teammates were great teammates. That was the beginning of 4 years at Penn. My class, the class of 1972, we were 99-6 in our 4 years of university.
And for those people who don't know who Chuck Daly is, he's the coach of the Bad Boy Pistons. And he was also the coach for the first Dream Team during the 92 Olympics.
Yes.
So how was he as a coach, and what did you learn from him?
Well, I think I had the interesting opportunity to have two head coaches, because Dick Harder, after my junior year, which we actually were, that was the year we were 28-1, and we were ranked number 3rd in the country. And we were one game away from the Final Four in March Madness, and we ended up losing that game. So we were 28-0 going into the game. And then after that season, Dick Harder went to Oregon and Chuck Daly came in for our senior year. Two different coaching styles, and they got the same result. With Dick Harder, it was like, okay, 28-0, Eastern Regional Final, and then we lost. Chuck Daly was more of a relaxed atmosphere, so it was a different coaching style. And actually, that had a big influence on my coaching because Dick Harder was a former Marine, and we practiced 3 hours a day, like really hard, diving on the floor, taking charges, and you couldn't describe it as fun. It was just hard work. And but we all met that challenge. But then Chuck Daly came in, and practice was a little bit more relaxed, and we could laugh a little bit, and we got the same result. So that really colored my my coaching future, because I saw two ways to get the same job done. And Chuck Daly's way, I think, was more like player friendly. So I remember the assistant coach, Rolly Massimino. He was Villanova. When Villanova won, I think did they win it with Mass? Anyway, we had a drill where we were in our defensive stance, and you just stay in it. Okay, and 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then your legs are starting to hurt. And we would just start laughing. And looking at each other. And we made a joke out of it, but we worked hard.
You were ready to play defense at least.
I tell young players, if they watched Villanova, when Villanova won the national championship.
Was it that year that when they scored in last second?
Yeah. But that entire game, if you looked at the way they played, they were in their stance the entire 40 minutes. And that's like real basketball condition. Because one thing I tell young players is we used to have a joke, which was way back before basketball really, came on the scene in Europe and internationally. And we would say that Europeans, in America, we played basketball from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. But in Europe, they played basketball from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. But that doesn't apply anymore. That was back in the 70s, okay? So to be in your stance for 40 minutes, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, that's real basketball condition.
But at that time in the universities, in those basketball teams, were there any people from Europe there then?
No, I remember the first. I think the first wave of Europeans was the Yugoslavians, like Tony Kukoc.
During the 80s, Petrovic, Vlade Divac, and Tony Kukoc.
But when it comes to that year when you have 28-0, do you still think about that game that you lost in semifinals to this day?
There's a backstory on that.
We'd love to hear it.
we not only lost the game, but Philadelphia again is like a very rich basketball tradition. So we had what's called the Big Five: Villanova, LaSalle, St. Joseph's, Temple, and Penn, the University of Pennsylvania, and those were like really intense rivalries. Okay. And we had beaten Villanova, like, say, 3 or 4 consecutive games. Okay, so we had beaten them twice previously that season, and we met them in the Eastern Regional Final. And we have different theories about what happened. My theory was that we were driven so hard, we were getting so close to that goal, just my opinion, that it might have been smart to back off a little bit and have us fresh. But we had one of our more intense practices, like the day before the game. And I remember I actually got a hip pointer. I got injured because we were playing 5-on-5 half court, and I made an up fake. And my teammate, Corky Calhoun, who was a first-round NBA draft pick, went for the fake and went way up in the air. That's how hard we were playing. Like, he went for my fake, and he was up in the air. And I looked up there like, holy shit. and he landed on my hip with his knee, and I got a hip pointer, so I was out of the game. So, actually, that's my story. I had nothing to do with the game the next day.
There'll be a total other outcome if you played.
You want to know what the score was?
Yeah.
90-47.
Oh, shit.
On national television.
From beaten team.
We lost by 43 points to a local rival that we had beaten 3 times before. And so that was the one loss. Like everything came out in that one loss.
Wow.
And I personally think it was because we were like just trained, because it was in North Carolina. It was really humid. And I remember after that practice that I just mentioned, we were like just dripping wet with sweat. And that's where, I mean, maybe we should have just had a light workout instead of, but it was like, we're almost there. We really need to go hard now. Let's
it has worked during the whole season. So,
yes. So that was the formula. And I think maybe, look, you know, of course it's easy for me to say that looking back, but I think, again, my teammates, when we talk about what happened, you know, somebody thinks maybe somebody put something in our food. But the bad part, it gets even worse. Okay? 90-47, lose by 43 points. We're down 22 points at halftime. You know, we go into halftime like 2 by 2, let's fight back. And it just kept going the other way. But we were actually on the same flight back to Philadelphia as Villanova. And when we boarded the plane, they were sitting in first class. And we had to walk past them back to the, yes. And then it got even worse, because when we arrived at the airport, all the Villanova fans were there. And we had to walk through the airport with the Villanova fans laughing at us. Now, it gets even worse. On the bus ride back to the city, I was sitting like on the left side of the bus, and we're going down the highway. And, you know, a bus, like the back tires, they're like, there's 2 of them on the back of the bus, like double tires. And I looked out the window, and the tire was rolling down the highway beside us. So what I suspect is a Villanova fan knew that was our bus, and they must have loosened the nuts on the tire. That's the only explanation I could have, because then our bus had to pull over because a tire just came off.
But they will know, did they win that year?
No, they lost in the final.
They lost in the final.
To UCLA. To UCLA. But anyway, we got to within 1 game of the championship, but lost by 43 points. So that's my worst memory, I can say. But that's the way it was.
Well, not so long after that, you got inspired to become an assistant coach yourself at Oregon University.
Yeah, what happened was when my college career is a bit, like I was on a great team, and every day at practice, I had to practice against first-round NBA draft picks. So one of our strengths was that our bench, not just me, but several other players, had to practice against the first unit every day. And so that was a part of our success. It was a very competitive environment. So that when I was a senior and Chuck Daly came in, he was the one that said to me, like, okay, I know how you were coming out of high school, and I know that you've been on the bench a lot, but you're going to get an opportunity to play. So actually, I became like a 6th man my senior year, depending, me and another player. I was like a small forward off guard, and then we had another player that was a 6'8", like a big forward. So depending on what he wanted, one of us would be the 6th man. So when I graduated as a senior, I thought that I might have a shot at the NBA, but I didn't have numbers and statistics. So I thought I could go over to Europe and maybe play. And I talked to Chuck Daly about that, and he said, yeah, I think that would be, a good opportunity. And I basically was waiting for something to happen. And while that was going on, Coach Harder called me up and said, come on out to Oregon. I'd like you to be an assistant coach. And at that time, the offer to be a full-time assistant coach was like what we say, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So I was waiting for something about playing in Europe, but then I had an opportunity to go into the coaching. And looking back at that now, that was something that gave me an opportunity to actually be a real coach and learn, the insides world of coaching. And so that's how I ended up as a full-time assistant at the U of O. And I did that for 6 years, from 1972 to 1978. So that was a great experience.
But around that time and around the time you were playing basketball, another Philly basketball player was becoming a star, or he was already a star, Dr. J. Did you ever had the chance to play with him or against him?
Well, I have lots of stories, and Dr. J is one of them. Dr. J was from New York, and we had a player, Phil Hankinson, who actually was a first-round NBA draft pick when I was the class of 72, and he was a year later, the class of 73. And I remember we were going to play the University of Massachusetts, which is where Dr. J went, and nobody knew. His name was Julius Erving. He wasn't Dr. J then. And I remember that Phil Hankinson was trying to prepare us for the game, and he said, they got this player, Julius Erving, who's like really spectacular. And we were, yada, yada, yada. And Corky Calhoun, well, I'll tell you more about him later, but he was like a real tough defensive player, 6'7", really athletic, long arms, big hands, and he was our defensive ace. And he guarded Dr. J, or I'll just say, before Dr. J, he guarded Julius Erving in the first half. And I think Julius Erving had 21 points in the first half. And we went in the locker room at halftime. But this gives you an idea of who Corky Calhoun was. He came out, and Dr. J only got 6 points in the second half. Nice. Okay, so we found out who Dr. J was. But then in the second half, Corky Calhoun, we played team defense, so it wasn't him alone. But just imagine, 21 and 6. But another sidelight to that is, this is one of the stories, Philadelphia has a sports history of not succeeding and underachieving or whatever.
Often comes to the finals, but not go all the way.
Yes, and that was the year the Portland Trailblazers won it. And the 76ers were up 2-0 against the Portland Trailblazers with Bill Walton and Corky Calhoun was a starting forward, and he was a defensive specialist, and he guarded Dr. J in that series. So I won't say he shut Dr. J down, but we were up 2-0 and we lost 4-2. We lost the NBA Finals after being up 2-0, and Corky got a ring playing for the Portland Trailblazers, and guarding Dr. J. But that was the year we had George McGinnis and Dr. J and Darryl Dawkins and Doug Collins and a World B. Free. We had a great team, but we didn't get the job done.
Yeah, those Philly teams, they often choke in the finals.
Come on now. Watch it.
I don't know, just Super Bowl losing to the Chiefs down up by 10.
Yes. I know.
But you said that you already had a thought about playing in the Europe around that time. How attractive was it to play in Europe?
Well, I think at that time, because we're talking like 1972, around that era, it was kind of like there was plenty of, you had the NBA, and then you had like semi-pro leagues, because we had a league called the Eastern League. So you actually traveled around, but these were like smaller towns, so that was like the only option if you didn't actually make it to the NBA. So Europe was the place that you had an opportunity to continue playing. So that was also the beginning of that period where players started going and playing over in Europe. So internationally, so I think it was mostly Europe then. Before the China and the South America and other places, I think it was more romantic to go to France and Italy and Spain and I had to make a big decision because my coach Dick Harder got a job to go back to Penn State and get the head coaching job there, and I had the opportunity to continue as a coach. But I reached a point where I realized that I spent a lot of time recruiting, and I realized that I had to make a decision. So I decided not to continue coaching with Dick Harder, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And then it just so happened by chance that there was someone that was a graduate assistant with the current coaching staff at Oregon that asked me if I was interested in a playing coaching job in Finland because he knew someone that was looking for a coach. So that's how it happened, actually. I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and Pesukaru, in Kawajoki.
You have the accent.
Well, that's the only Finnish I know beer, olut.
One of the first things you learn.
And cheeseburger. Ustohamparilainen. No, my first pro contract was in Finland as a player coach, and they were great people, and it was a small town way up in the northern part, and that's how I got my start. And I actually visited some friends in Stockholm, and then I ended up the next year getting a job in Stockholm. So that was like the stepping stone. So I started out in Finland, and I spent 1 season there. And then the next season, I was a coach in Stockholm. And so that's where I started in Finland. So don't ask me to speak Finnish.
But after Stockholm, was it your next stop, Norway next?
No, that's when Saudi Arabia came
Saudi
up.
Arabia came there, okay.
So I had one of my former players got a coaching job in Saudi Arabia. And he did that for 2 years. So I actually spent my first 2 years in Stockholm. And then he contacted me and said that the coach that he had worked for, the team he had worked for, needed a coach. And they asked him to find someone. So the money was 3 times what I was making in Stockholm. So it was a no-brainer. So I thought, like, well, let me go down there and make some money. So that's how I ended up down there. It's quite an experience, I can tell you.
How was basketball in Saudi Arabia? Like today, they are investing a lot of money when it comes to big boxing events. They have this summer, they have bought many soccer players to come to Saudi Arabia. But how was the basketball quality in Saudi Arabia at that time? How was the atmosphere playing there?
It was how can we say? I had a club that was a very good club and had a very strong team. And we made the playoffs, but there was like we were on the Gulf side, and then you had Riyadh, and then you had Jeddah on the Red Sea part. And an interesting thing is that the sports complex in where we were in where was it? Al-Khobar, and then you had Riyadh, and then you had Jeddah. It was the exact same building because the Saudis. It was like I think it was from the Olympics had this type of arena. You know, the swimming and the basketball and everything, like top-notch arena. And the Saudi says, well, we order 3 of them.
Just like a table.
You're in 3 different cities and walking into the exact same building. But I remember the interesting thing was like the team in Jeddah, they had players that were like African blood. So they actually had these tall athletics, and they weren't like the run-of-the-mill Saudis. So I'll never forget that, is they had these guys that were running around dunking and everything. But no, it was, I think at that time, the level, I wouldn't say it was the highest level, but it was competitive, yeah.
How long did you stay there?
I had a 2-year contract, and 2 years was enough. From Saudi Arabia, was back to Sweden, actually.
Back to Sweden?
Because in Sweden, I coached a team that... actually, their goal was to get to the elite level, and I was a player coach for the farm teams, because that's one thing I always would play at a high level and have the young players and be the player coach for the younger players. So we actually achieved our goal and made it to the top league. And then I got the offer to go to Saudi Arabia, and I took it. And they had actually dropped. They played in the top league that first season. And then the second season, they almost dropped out of the Division I. And then that's when I came back to my old club, and I was a player coach for them. And that was one of my most fun seasons, because we finished in the middle, but it was a great group. It was, all I can say is we partied hard and we played hard.
How it's supposed to be.
We had some guys that threw some hellacious parties. So anyway, that's where I came back, and then I got a job in another part of Sweden in the top level, a small town in the southern part of Sweden. And to make a long story short, what happened was there had previously been no limitations or restrictions on how long you could be a coach. Because they had, by Swedish regulations, like, for example, if you were a baker or a carpenter or some kind of professional, there was a time limit on your visa. But there was nothing on a coach. And then they arbitrarily or suddenly decided that a coach's term was 4 years. So at the end of those 4 years, I was basically out of a job in Swedish basketball. And that's how I ended up in Norway, because I came over to Norway, and then my first job in Norway was up in Tromsø.
And how was that going from Stockholm all the way up to Tromsø?
The Paris of the North. Yeah. No, well, you know a little bit. You spent some time up in Harstad, so the people were very friendly, and but Tromsø is like once you've been around town a few times, that's it.
Everybody knows you. Yeah.
Same thing for Harstad. Downtown Harstad.
But basketball season is during September, October, November, December. During those winter months, how was it to come to Tromsø? Because you have the mørketid there, and that's
no sunshine for a whole day, every day.
And it's even worse in Tromsø than in Harstad.
Yeah.
So how was it out that going from Stockholm all the way to Tromsø and take that?
Well, all I can say is that it was a unique experience being that far north and the darkness and I don't know how things would have played out because I had basically a 1-year contract, and I was a player coach for the men's team, and I also coached the women's team. But then I also, when I actually was leaving Sweden and coming to Norway, I interviewed in Oslo with 3 different clubs, Oscar, Bärumsvik, and Persbråten. And I really wanted to go to Oslo, but they didn't have the economy. The clubs there didn't have the economy. And the club that was the most attractive was this club, Bärumsvik. I think they had been in the finals the previous year. But they just didn't have the economy, and Tromsø did. So that's how I ended up in Tromsø, because they made the best offer. But after that season, I actually got the offer to be the national coach, and I got an offer to come to Bärumsvik, which was a better offer. And then being a national coach, it was better for me to actually be further in the center of basketball. So that's after 1 season in Tromsø, I ended up in Oslo, working for Bärumsvik, which is where I spent 6 years before I went on this continuous journey of working for various clubs.
But in Bärumsvik, you had quite a successful career. 4 championships in those 6 years. What was so special with that team that you won so many championships with?
Well, I'll tell you, the players. They were coming off of a season where they were disappointed because they had been in the final the previous year, I think, and then they didn't make the playoff the year after with the same personnel. And they were a very talented group, but they needed to learn to focus their attention together. What I learned about them was they spent a lot of time yelling at the referees, getting distracted, and all that kind of, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. A bad call, okay, it's a bad call, but you got to move on. Get the win. Okay, you can't blame it on the referee when you lose. But what it was they were they had a very deep, they had a lot of depth. They had a really strong basketball culture. I would say most of the players had gone to high school and had a year of high school ball in the States. And they, I, in all humility, it's like, okay, I might have success as a coach, but it's because players buy into what it takes to be successful. And I think that's one of the things that's been a big part of my coaching career is like, you have to make sacrifices for the good of the group. And that was part of my college career. We had players, everybody could go out and score 20 points, okay? But we shared the ball, and I remember even in practices, the ball went around. We just had that, the spirit of, hey, I give up for you, you give up for me. What goes around comes around. And that's maybe one of the most difficult things to teach young players is okay, if you make a sacrifice for your teammate and he makes a sacrifice for you, then, you get the ball when you're open, you don't take bad shots, you find the open man, you make the extra pass, all those little things that goes into making a successful team. And they were the epitome of that. In fact, I have something for you guys.
All right.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. This is my one achievement as an author. So I have one claim to being an author. And this is something I did for my players, okay? And I thought I would present this to you guys. So when you ask me about that team, yes, they won 4 consecutive national championships. And each year was a different goal. So we won it the first year, so then the second year was okay. We want to repeat, let's work hard, okay? Because winning it one year, it's even more special to win it. And then the third year, the goal was, okay, let's go through the regular season undefeated. Okay, and we did it. Okay, so each year the goal was something a little bit more ambitious. And then that's what this story is that we won 4 consecutive championships because they weren't satisfied. And they took the challenge because when you're a champion, everybody's shooting for you. And therefore, I'll give it to you since you got the basketball jersey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'm really looking forward to read this.
But in all humility, I wrote that book as a way of saying thank you to my players, and that's what they did. Ironically, the 5th year, we were in the semifinal, best of 3, and we won game 1. And in game 2, we lost the game on a last-second play where we were up by 2 points. And we were on defense. And at the top of the circle, where the 3-point arc was, the defender on the ball flicked at the ball like that, and it went up in the air. And the offensive player reached up to get the ball back. Like he wasn't shooting, but he was getting the ball back. And the whistle blew, the referee called a foul, and that player got 3 free throws.
Wow.
And he made the 3 free throws, and we lost the game.
That's a hell of a way to lose a game.
And I was really, yeah. And I'll never forget that it doesn't matter, but I said to one of the referees, oh, come on, da-da-da, and he goes, oh, don't worry, you guys will win the 3rd game on your home court. And on our home court, game 3 to go to the finals for the 5th year in a row.
I'm sorry, who were we playing against?
We were playing against Oscar.
Uh-huh.
We were up 15 points in the first half, playing really well, with confidence. And then a player from the other team made a 3-pointer at the buzzer. So they went in at halftime, only down 12. Because you know how in the psychology of basketball,
momentum.
15, momentum. And 15 is okay, that's a substantial lead. And especially if you come out and add on to it.
Yeah, it's closer to 20.
That's it. Okay, so 15 can go to 20. Or, 12 that's nothing. 10, 12 points, lockdown on defense.
3 and then single digits.
There you go. Anyway, so that's what turned the game around. Now, we are up by 6 points. I think it was with 25 seconds to go. We had the game won. Well, they were pressing us, and we had a play. We were up by 6 points with under 30 seconds to go, let's say, okay? Back then we had a 30-second clock. And it's obvious the other team's going to press. So we came down, and I think we had a 1-and-1, and we missed the free throw. They fouled us, and then they came back, and they made a 3-pointer. I think it was 22 seconds left. And then they were pressing us, and we had a player that was open on a run out, a leak out, over a pass over the top, and he had a breakaway. And he went for a dunk instead of just making the layup. We were up 6 points. That started, excuse me. We were up 6 points, and we had the ball inbounding. So the layup would have put us up by 8 points and put the game out of reach.
A 3-possession game?
A 3-possession game instead of 2. And he went for a dunk, and it hit the heel of the bucket and bounced all the way out to the top of the circle. So it led them to a 3-point shot, and they made it. So then they were only down 3, and then they fouled us, and then we missed a one-on-one, and then they came back, and they made a 3-point shot to send the game into overtime, and we lost, okay? So we went from a 3-possession game with an easy score that we didn't make, and then we didn't make the final because they hit a couple of 3-pointers.
And that was there's so many things that have to fall in place. 2 threes, missed dunk, and everything has to go against you guys.
And then that was it, and that was like maybe the most, aside from the 43-point loss, that was like a really tough loss.
I can imagine that.
Then the next year we made it back to the final and lost and got the silver. And Mark DiGiacomo, my American, he's out there somewhere. He got the silver medal, and we came into the locker room, and I went into the toilet, and there was a silver medal in the toilet. The bowl was clean. I hadn't started yet, so the bowl was clean. There was only water in there. And I saw it, and I was like, oh, man, come on. So I reached down there and pulled the medal out. I said, come on, whose medal is this in the toilet? And it was Mark, my American, because he was such an intense competitor. He didn't want the silver. I said, come on, man. It's like, don't take it like that. It's like, it's, respect the silver. So I don't know if he still has it. He might have went home and threw it in the toilet. No, but that was my team. In 6 years, we won 4 in a row. And then we shoulda, woulda, coulda. Is the way I say it. We shoulda, we woulda, we coulda, but we lost the game 3 to go to the final. And then the next year we got into the final and lost. So that was the story from Barhamsburg.
So how was it that time? You mentioned there was an American player. You were there too. Were there many American players or immigrant players playing in the Norwegian league?
Yeah, back there then in the Norwegian league, you could only have 1 American. So basically, every team had 1 foreign player, which then was usually an American.
So in 2000, we had the switch format from the Norwegian league to the BLNO. And then you were coach for Oslo Kings, am I right?
Yeah, I think, let's see, the sequence was I worked for Barhamsburg, and then I went to Amerud in Oslo. And then Amerud became the Oslo Kings, is how that worked. And that was like 1999, because the league started in 2000. And a little bit about basketball history. There was a coach named David Swan, and he coached Ulriken.
Remember? He was.
You remember. Yeah. And what he did is he came in and said, okay, because it was Hans Brundtland was his name from Bergen, and David Swan were the ones that had this concept. And I think TRHM Melhus from here in Trondheim, I think was a part of that, to start up the Basketligaen. And what it was is like 99, the 99 season was like the season before they were going to launch the Basketligaen. And I remember when we first had the meeting, like this was going to be the season before we were starting up. And one of the discussions is because we were going to be on television and we wanted to get sponsors and do all these great things. So that we needed to kick it up a few notches from a recreational league. With people with beer bellies and practicing a couple, because then the norm was you practice 3 times a week generally, and you play games. I think it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever. I think most teams and you didn't have like morning practices, and David Swan came in and they were lifting weights and they were doing morning practices and they were like in far superior condition than the other teams in the league, and they were beating everybody by 40 and 50 points. Okay, so that was the statement that David Swan and his team made to everybody else, like, hey, if we're going to make this league, then we need to get in shape and look like real basketball players. And his team was like all buff and fit and beating everybody by 50 points. So that was the year before the league. And then Oslo Kings, I was actually the coach of the Oslo Kings, their first year in the league. And if I remember correctly, I guess if you've been in this game long enough, you get fired sometimes. So I actually got fired that year.
What happened?
Well, again, I'm a professional, so you take it as it comes. But we had Torgeir Bryn returning from Spain, I believe it was, and we had all this potential. But you don't just snap your fingers and make yourself a great team. You have to build it up. So actually, in our first 12 games in the league, we had lost 6 games, but we were in third place with a 6-6 record. And 3 of our losses had been like at the end of the game. 2 were at the buzzer, and like 1 was, so we very easily could have been 9-3 as well as 6-6. And the board or the steer, like, they decided that they wanted to make a change, and I got called in, and okay, hey, do what you want to do, okay. So I got fired, and they replaced me with another coach. And there's an interesting side to that story, which is, okay, when I got home, my assistant coach called me up, Sergio Hoffman. He was from Venezuela, I believe. Great assistant coach. Learned a lot from him. He called me up and said, "What's going on?" They called me up to ask me if I wanted to take over the coaching job. And I said, I just got fired. And he goes, "Oh, Jesus." And then he didn't take the job. He was like loyal. He said, "No way I'm taking it." Because we were of the same mind. It's like, come on, we're building something here. We had 3 tough losses, but no reason to panic. Also, Torgeir Bryn was injured, so he wasn't playing. So anyway, they went on because they won the championship that year. And then I remember I didn't go to any games, but I just kind of followed the team. And this is one of my coaching moments that you appreciate the bond that you have with players, is that they were in the finals, and I think they won game 1, and then they lost game 2, and it was the best of 5. So it was like an important game 3 in Oslo, and I decided to go to that game, and they had like a full crowd. Like that was when the first year of the league.
For those people that haven't been watching basketball or weren't born then, it was 5,000 people watching those games. Oslo Spectrum, I think they played there.
Yeah. Well, that was the season opener, was in the Oslo Spectrum. And what I did was I came into the gym and I went to the furthest corner away and sat up in the last row. I just was there to like support the players. And the players caught an eye on me sitting up there, and they all came up into the stands to shake my hand because they hadn't seen me since I got fired. And they all came up there, like they were warming up, and they saw me. And they all came over and said, "Coach, this is for you. You should have been here." And that was one of the moments. And they went on to win the championship. And I always remember that they gave me the respect. But anyway, it was...
like you said, it's a process. You made those fundamentals in that team, and then they just took it further afterwards.
Yeah, again, when you're a professional, okay, if, you get fired sooner or later, so it doesn't matter why. But I also know that just about every coach in the league called me up on the phone. And, this is before instant communication by messages and whatnot. I got phone calls from every other coach in the league saying, "Hey, coach, we don't agree with this, just call and let you know that." I was like, "Hey, I appreciate it." So that was, okay, I appreciate that. But anyway, Oslo Kings won the first BLNO title. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had many new players that year. I remember one of my favorites was Dante Harris.
Yeah, Dante Harris, and we had Kelvin Woods, who played in Clemson previously. Yeah. And there's some ironies. There were some ironies that went on, which is part of this whole thing, is that the club was really trying to put this powerhouse of a team together. But I remember one of the first concepts is that the league was supposed to be entertaining, not just playing games, but it's supposed to be entertaining, and you had to have a halftime show, and you had to have cheerleaders and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, like, for my pro player, I wanted Kelvin Woods. And Kelvin Woods was not the picture of the tall, athletic, dunking. He was the best low post player in the league. He had these great footwork, great skills.
Yeah, great post up.
He was a scorer in the low post, and I saw him as a low post scorer to complement the other players, okay? And we had Dante. And what I remember is the board said, him, like, don't we need somebody that's more exciting? And I was like, well, I want somebody that's going to help win games, not just go out and put on a show. And that's who Kelvin was. And Kelvin and Dante. And then I think, then we also signed a Canadian guard, Barnaby Craddock.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had a team that once they kind of got the chemistry functioning, they went on and won it, which is my whole point. It's like we were 12 games into the season and I got fired, but I also know that another coach told me that he knew that I was in trouble because they were going after the same sponsor, and the sponsor asked him what their goal was or what expectations were for the season. And, as a coach, your stock answer was, okay, I think we have a pretty strong team. If everything goes according to plan, everybody stays healthy, I think we'll be, in a fight for the championship. But you don't promise anything. And then he said to me, this other coach, he goes like, Ron, I knew you were in trouble when the sponsor that had talked to you came to us and asked me that question. And he gave that answer. The Oslo Kings are promising a championship. That's what the Oslo Kings had told them, the sponsors, that, we're going to win it all. And that's when the coach for the other team said, we're going to have a good team and, we're going to be in the top. But you didn't guarantee that you're going to win it all. So that's when he said he knew I was in trouble, when they were coming to him saying, hey, they say they're going to take it all. So that's where the pressure was on them, like probably, okay, and what's going on? You've lost 6 games. And, and then it's like, well, fire the coach. So, okay, I got fired and they went on to win it. So I'm happy for them. But that's the whole story about that incident. But Kelvin Woods, my man Kelvin. And then Kelvin wasn't in the greatest shape. And I remember we went out running together because I had to, have it, we really were like, okay. And Kelvin, Kelvin.
Yeah, I remember from Harstad days and Tromsø days.
His body type. Yeah. Was like, don't judge him by his body type. He just
judge him by the game.
By his game. Yeah. And he was a champion.
Yeah.
He was a champion. Yep.
It's good to hear those names. I remember those names alongside Trent Peabody, Mickey Jackson up in northern Norway. They were foundation when it comes to Harstad Basketball Club, who went on to be Harstad Vikings that you played for.
Yeah, so when the Berano started, then you got all those American English names, Harstad Vikings. I think maybe Asker Aliens was before, but you had the Oslo Kings and the Kongsberg Penguins, and everybody got their name. Because like you said, it was supposed to be a professional league and you had everything in place, a halftime show and please the crowd and sponsors. So the games went on TV2.
Yeah.
Not the first channel TV2, not those extra channels that we have today. Yeah. The first channel, and you had the Basket Magasinet every Saturday.
That was great. Yeah.
Then you had a half an hour that dedicated just to Norwegian basketball.
Well, that was clearly the high point of Norwegian basketball because TV2, I think they invested something like 4 million kroner. I mean, it was like top-notch production and, like you say, a magazine and, the highlights. So I think that was a high point. It was really well done. And, they had like a standard. The coaches had to wear a suit and tie and all that kind of stuff. And you had to have a show, yeah.
And from this perspective, it's a bit hard for people to grasp that how big it was before. Because like today we have Kongsberg Miners that have a lot of show and they're quite professional. But that was the regular for every team in the country to have at least 1,000 people on the games and put a bigger show.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember also one of the requirements was you had to have an arena that could sit 1,000 people. So that was along with some of the others. Remember the smoke? Like they had
smoke machines.
Oh my goodness! the lights went out. Yeah. The lights went out, and then they had smoke, and then the lights came back on. It would be like
there was no interest in the Harstad Vikings. The techno song playing, and then the smoke and fireworks, and then we ran out.
But I remember one of the funniest ones was the Centrum Tigers. One of my best friends, we went to high school together and played high school ball together. He was a general manager for the Centrum Tigers, and they had these really professional dancing girls, like they were women, like a professional dancing group. And then I remember, I'm not going to mention the team, but there was another team that had a halftime show with the Go-Go Girls. And they were all these like 15, 16-year-old girls, with the pom-poms. And we were like, oh, okay. We want to look at the real, deal. They're out there. We don't want to see the high school girls, So I'm not going to mention the club, but that was a pretty striking contrast.
Who was most fun to play against in those days?
I think at that time, everybody, I think the level was pretty balanced. I think it was pretty competitive back then. Because I think every team that was in the league, had, like we said, the previous year, everybody had made preparations to get in shape and to get all these. Because I remember one of the big concepts then was that if we wanted basketball to grow, we needed to have a more professional appearance. So you remember back then the norm was you came into the gym and you just threw your bags and all your baggage behind the bench and, there was no order, no structure. And, you want to get a sponsor, they walk in, it just looks like a, recreation league. So one of the first requirements was that each team had to have a locker room where you could lock the door and all the baggage and luggage was tucked away and every bench looked, had a towel and, it was well, just gave a better image. It didn't cost money. It didn't cost money to look more professional. So I remember that. So everybody kind of, I think bought into the concept that, okay, we're going to do the things that don't cost money and we're going to do the things like the players have to be in shape and look like they're professional players because we're, asking people to buy into this, come to the games and pay money. And I remember the first game with the Centrum Tigers, it was a sellout. You guys are talking about the crowds. It was a sellout. The game was at Domus Athletica in Oslo, and the crowd went all the way around the building. And I think it was the mayor of the city at that time was too late and he didn't get in. That was one of the stories. It's like, he couldn't jump in front of the line, and flash, hey, I'm the mayor. So that was one of the side stories. It's like it was such a big crowd that the mayor didn't even get in.
But you, Ian, had many away games in our lovely city of Harstad against the Vikings. How was those games?
Well, Harstad was always, was it always... Harstad first and Tromsø second. I'm sure what was the sequence there? Teams played...
first the Harstad on Fridays and then Tromsø on Sundays.
Yeah. Okay. I remember, staying at the hotel, downtown Harstad. It was a great atmosphere. Harstad, was a really nice gym. The fans were on top of the action. There was a very, I think Harstad... at that time was a really, really nice place to play, because it was happening in Harstad. Yeah, I think the great atmosphere. First of all, great floor. Had a great wooden floor. And I think at that time, Tromsø still had the artificial So I think Harstad was a good place to play. Because actually, when you play that second game on the weekend, it was nice to have a game on that wooden floor in Harstad on a Friday night. Because as players, you know, like those artificial surfaces take a lot out of your legs.
So Tromsø always had the advantage in Harstad because we got you tired, guys, and then you went to Tromsø.
Yes.
I remember a game we were playing against, supposed to play against Kongsberg Penguins, and you were the coach then. Mm-hmm. And we always played games on Friday, always. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, this time we were supposed to play the game on a Sunday. I don't remember why. And we had a big event in Harstad for our sponsors, for kids, for the community on a Thursday, where the club met and we were in the Harstadhallen. We were playing with kids and everything. And after that event was over, the coach Lazar Vidacic said, "All right, guys, after the event, you just go home." And so we said, "Yeah, all right." We were quite young. He said, "Yeah, okay." And then when he went, we just started hooping. We just started playing. And I said to for some reason, I said to my friend that I haven't rolled my ankle for like 10 years since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And 2 minutes later, I rolled my ankle. It was like this big. Mm-hmm. And we had a practice on Saturday, the day before the game. And I was just trying to hide this from the coach, trying to run around with a rolled ankle. But I couldn't play. So I couldn't play against you guys on that Sunday, but it was... you had a really good team, Rodney Hawthorne and some other legends.
Terrence Randolph.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had some real competitive games in Harstadhallen. That's good memories.
And that season, Asker Aliens went undefeated in the regular season and were up 2-0 against Harstad Vikings in the finals. Came back 3-2.
Came back and won.
3-2. I played for the Vikings one season. They were in the finals 7 years. They only won once.
Here's the explanation.
You connect the dots.
No, but there were good American players in Harstad those years, like Jeff Rogers and Mario Woodson, and many good American players. You too have played in Norway throughout all these years. If you were to pick a starting five with all American players who has played in Norway, which players would you pick? 5 players.
Ooh.
And you can choose
from all the clubs.
From all the clubs, from all the time since you've been here.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Golly, there's so many years and so many players.
Terrence was a good point guard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could run off a lot of names. I remember the guard that played for Sverresborg. Back then with Ivan Grunley and Tommy and Beckedal. They were so well. Obviously, Jeff Rogers is one of them. He was almost unstoppable.
Yeah, he had a fadeaway. Nobody could stop that.
Yeah, golly. I almost have to take a pass on that. Because it's like, how do you disturb? Like, okay, for example, Mark DiGiacomo was not a fancy player, but he was a champion. We won four championships, like, with him at Barhamsberg, and lost in a 5th final. And then both him and I went to Oscar, and we won a championship there. Okay, so Mark won 5 championships with me on the bench, but he was my player. I mean, so if you want to, talk about a winner, okay, Mark was a winner, and you have to say, hey, like a champion is a champion is a champion. Boy, there were some great athletes. I remember there was a player, Frank Shaw, I think, for Ulriken. Remember the guy that could jump out of the gym? Frank Shaw. No, there's so many. Yeah. There's so many. Terrence Randolph was a great player. Rodney, Hawthorne. I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you on that, because I know there's a lot of names that I'm not mentioning. But
it's hard to answer on the spot.
Throw some names at me. You throw some at me. I'll agree.
Yeah, you can put Kelvin Woods in it.
Yeah, well, Kelvin Woods was a winner, like I said, because the Tromsø teams were never like, these teams that, had like great talent, but they had a great chemistry. Okay, hey, Mickey Jackson, how can we like clean out Mickey Jackson, the guy that could go out and get 30 points and 25 rebounds after relaxing the night before? There was one time, it was a preseason tournament. Sorry, Mickey. There was a preseason tournament in Oscar, and Mickey had been out late the night before, apparently, having some social activities, and he had gotten dehydrated, seriously dehydrated. And in the middle of the game, he came off the court and laid down and started going into convulsions or cramps. And everybody was, oh my goodness, No, but Mickey, I remember, this is a funny Mickey story, is I think somewhere about late 1990s, because, come on, you guys know as players, come on, you can't camp out in the 3-second lane. 3-second rule is there for a purpose, all right? So, you're in there and then you're out of there, okay? And you don't call, ticky-tack 3-second calls. So if you're on your way out, the referee shouldn't blow the whistle, I got you, Anyway, FIBA came up with this rule interpretation that the referees would only call 3 seconds if you had control of the ball. Okay, so I can understand, all right, you're posted up, you're deep in the paint, you get the ball and you're in there for 3 seconds, you haven't taken a shot up, okay, 3 seconds, okay? But they changed the interpretation, or that the 3-second call was only if you had the ball. And then I kind of disagreed with that. I said, that doesn't make sense, because you have to fight for position. Like, so if you come into the paint and you start camping out and then the whistle doesn't blow, now I got to try to, muscle you out, because I'm not going to let you catch the ball there. So Mickey Jackson, used the rule to camp out in the lane, and the guards were shooting, and Mickey was a great rebounder with the long arms and great timing and great anticipation, all that stuff. And he was like a vacuum cleaner, just eating up the missed shots and getting putbacks. Okay, then that's when I kind of made a point to the referees, hey, come on, this rule doesn't make sense. You see what Mickey Jackson's doing? He's in the lane for 3 seconds, and it's he only touches the ball when he gets an offensive rebound. So then it's okay, you might have a point there. So that was Mickey. 30 points, 25 rebounds, great athlete.
You won also a championship with Frøya in Belano.
Frøya was my first coaching job in Bergen. And I took over a team. I think back then there were 7 teams in the league, and they played a triple series, so you had 21 games. And I think the previous season, Frøya was 4-17, and the 4 wins were against the last place team, or 3 of the wins were against the last place team, or whatever it was. Then the following season was my first year in Frøya, and we lost our first 6 games. We were 0-6. I'll never forget the general manager came up and was when do you think we're gonna, things are gonna turn around? It's we're getting better each game. And we had a Latvian guard, who came to me and said, because we didn't have a pro player at that time. We had Peter Bullock. He was a pro player, actually. And then he said, no, we didn't have Peter. We didn't have a big. And I was in the market for a power forward. We needed some size, height. And he says, well, I have somebody that I know that can help us, but he's a player, but he's not big. And I was like, oh, well, we need some physical presence, And he goes, yeah, but I think this guy can help us. And Edmunds Gabrins from Latvia. I got to give Edmunds a shout out. My MVP player, he came up, paid his way up to try out on his own, because the club wasn't, because they were we need to get a big guy. So Edmonds flew up at his own expense, and I think he came up on a Thursday evening because he was coming in on Thursday evening, and we had a practice, and my Latvian young guy, Reno, says, "Oh, Edmonds is coming up this evening." So he came up, and then the next day at practice, Edmonds had been in town, and he had come into the gym and worked out with the other Latvian guard, Reno, in the morning. So when I came to practice, he goes, "Yeah, Edmonds made like 22 straight three-pointers." 22 straight three-pointers. So that was Edmonds. He comes in, and we win we're 0-6, and we win 9 out of our remaining 15 games. So we win 66% of our games with Edmonds, and he was the league MVP. Okay, so that was that year. We made the playoff. We got eliminated in the first round, and then the next year we won the championship. And so that was a great team. It was a fun team. Again, any championship team, it's all about the players because they're the ones that have to go on the court and believe in each other and get the job done. But yeah, Freya was in 2012. We won the championship. Yeah, so.
Around that time, we were also looking up to a Bosnian player playing in the Norwegian league. His name was Amir Alagic, and I believe that you were his first coach.
Magic Alagic. Yeah, he came in as a refugee, and Oscar was the club that he ended up playing with, and him and I played together on like the Division 3 team or something like that. So initially he played on the lower level before he went into the higher level. And I remember a Amir story. We were doing physical training and practice, and there was like these exercises like you do in the military. You drop down and do a squat and kick your legs out and up, stand there. And I'll never forget that I came in the practice one day and we're doing this, and he made a comment. I didn't come to play basketball and do military exercises. No, but Amir was a great player, great shooting touch, and for many years he was a key player for the Oscar Aliens. And big shout out to Amir. Amir. Yeah.
Yeah, he did many of those small things really good.
Yeah, the thing is he did, some players are flashy, but some players are just efficient. So he was a good shooter. He didn't do a whole lot of dribbling. He was very economic of movements, and he was a scorer. He could put points up on the board. Very smooth, not a whole lot of flash. So that was Amir.
Yeah, you just turn at the scoreboard and suddenly he has 25 points and you didn't even notice it.
Yeah, Amir, great player. Mm-hmm. And I always appreciate the players that have performed, and he's one of them. Mm-hmm.
But in the end of your career, you were talking in the beginning of the podcast, you were coach for the Sverresborg team. Mm-hmm. And how did you come to Trondheim again, and how was those years in Sverresborg?
Oh, okay. When I went to Freya, it was a 3-year contract. So the first year we went from a team at the bottom to the playoffs, and we got eliminated in the first round. The second year we won the championship, and then the third season we lost our starting front court. Peter Bullock didn't play. Mila Combat, I think he went to Sweden. Nicholas Philip went to Tromsø. So our starting front court was gone, and we were picked to be at the bottom of the league. But what I did was I kind of retooled the team, and we became a small run and gun team, and we actually finished in the playoffs. It made it to the Final Four when we were predicted to be at the bottom. So after that season, the economy and so they didn't want to extend my contract. But Trondheim Basketball, I guess you know who Morten Tufte is. He contacted me and said, okay, we'd like you to come back to Trondheim and be the head of our youth program. So I came back to Trondheim in 2014 and coached. I was the head coach for the Sverresborg's Ungdom, and working as the head coach for the youth section. We had a very talented 2000 group, and we had good talent in the 1990 group, which was Christian Tufte. And they were also, I think, a group that were very homogenous. And I do know that Christian Tufte and Sigurd Laronga were two very, very competitive and highly motivated individuals. And they had a dream to go to the Nationals. And actually, the way my career ended was in 2018 when we went to the U19 championships, which was the 99 and the 2000 group combined. And we had a group of like 22 players in the Spillerstal that year. So it was really a club effort to put all the resources into the practicing and having good practices. And we had really good practices all season long. And we went to the tournament, and we had the luxury, because we had a full bench, of being able to get out ahead because of the first unit performed really well. They were highly motivated and really focused, and our early games were like blowouts. So we had the luxury of resting players and playing the bench and everything. And when we got to the semifinal, it was against Ullern, who was a heavy favorite. Nobody expected us to, get beyond the semifinal. And all I can say is the players performed. So we upset Ullern in the semifinal to get to the final. At that point, you could say, like, hey, we can't lose. We're in the final. And we were, again, like heavy underdogs against the team from Kongsberg. And Kongsberg had won all their games easy. And the thing I remember most is I was at that point that I decided that I was going to retire, because the retirement age was 67, so I'd already gone a year beyond. So I came to the realization that this final game was going to be my last basketball game. Player, coach. This was going to be the first moment of before a game, the adrenaline, the emotion, the spirit of the game. And I started getting welled up with emotion. And I came into the locker room, and the players were all sitting and waiting for me to give the pregame talk. And I came into the locker room. You've been in Haukelandshallen?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a locker room all the way at the end of the hallway where there's a little gym. And anyway, there's a little spot against the wall out of sight of the locker room itself. And I was in that little spot, and I was all choked up. This is my last game in a long career. And maybe got a little bit moist in the eyes.
Maybe a little bit.
A little bit of moisture in the eyes. And I came out, and, I always said to a team, when you're in a championship game, it's like you have nothing to lose. Just go out and give it your best effort. But you're in a championship, and you only have so many opportunities in life to play for a championship. So make the most of it and just have fun. You can't lose. And then, anyway, that was my message. And then I started to get choked up. And, the moisture got a little bit more moist. And I couldn't say anything. I said, get on out in the court and warm up. Okay? So I cut it off because I was all choked up, and I cut it off and just get out in the court. And then, like how it is, like you're warming up on the side court while another game was going on. And then they were out in the court warming up. And then I stayed in the locker room and got my composure back. And I walked out on the court, and I said, hey, get over here, on me. And they all came over, and I said, did you guys fall for that crying routine? And they all, just like you guys, they all broke out laughing. And I think that like took all the pressure off. You know, like you can't lose. And they went out and we were down 28. We were down 28-17 and after the end of the first period. We were getting our butts kicked. 28 points and we're down 11. And I just came in and says, hey, fellas, you know, you don't win or lose the game in the first period. You know, we got 3 periods to play. You know what we got to do, like shut down the lane, team defense, 2x2, work our way back. And they just went out there with so much confidence and they were so relaxed. But the kicker was Kongsberg was really, because I'm old school, you know, you're in a do or die game, you know, like, you know, attack the hoop, you know, take it to the rack, you know, draw fouls, get to the foul line, you know, put pressure on the defense. But they were satisfied to bomb away from the 3-point arc. In that game, they took 36 3-point shots and they only made 5 or 7.
That's crazy.
To me, that was a gimme, but okay. Again, that was what they had success with. They were great shooters. So what happened was the whole game turned around, and we were up 6 points, I think, at halftime. So we went from 11 down to up 6, so like 17-point turnaround. And of course, you know, Kongsberg was a very strong team, and I remember we played them in the Scania Cup, which is like the top youth tournament, like a couple months before. And 3 of their key players were like on the men's team. And so they didn't play in that tournament. So we beat them in the tournament without their best players. So now we got their best players on the court, you know, 28-17, things aren't looking good. We go into the break and it's like, hey fellas, just relax, do what we know how to do. And we come out and we dominate the second period, go up by 6 points at halftime. Now we're walking off the court. You know, the locker room was like way across the gym, you know, because the final was like on that one court on the side. And we go into the locker room and this is on top of my pregame thing, you know, my boo-hoo, my fake crying thing. Yeah. And I go into the locker room and I'm feeling it. I'm like, can you feel it? Yeah. Can you smell it? Yeah. Can you taste it? Yeah. Well, let's get back out there and finish the job. That was my halftime spirit. And we all ran out there. We won the game, and that was my memory. I walked off the court. But on top of that, I mentioned Christian and Sigurd were co-MVPs. Sigurd had 39 points. Christian had 22 points. I think they scored something like 62. Sigurd had 39, Christian had 23. They had like 62 out of our 90 points, and they were co-MVPs of the game. But the kicker is, Sigurd, when I was thinking about retiring the previous year, said to me, and I have the greatest respect for Sigurd, he said, Coach, you can't retire now. You got to coach one more year. Because, you know, Christian and Sigurd had this dream, because I want to win a championship for you. That's what he said to me. Coach, you can't quit because I want to win a championship for you. And damn if he didn't do it. And that's how I don't coach anymore. Like, that was my last team. They won the championship. I walked off the court a champion. 2 players that gave everything, you know, got the job done on the court. And again, it's not about them. It was like the whole team. Because it took a team defensive effort to lock down that high-octane, 3-point shooting team. And they got the job done. And I noticed on your thread from, because I told you I read one of your podcasts with Big Mike. And I looked at the comment thread, and you said, like, well, who else would you like to have on here? And one of my players, I think...
was Johan?
Johan said Ron Billingslea, right? He did a great defensive job, you know, because, you know, the players that score the points get the, you know, all the headlines, but he did a great defensive job because the starting 5, because I think I only used 6 players. I kept the rotation tight, you know, and okay, that's what you play for. Okay, at that point, you got to, you know, play your cards, your strongest cards. So we had a 6-man rotation. And they won the national championship. I think that was the first championship that a Trondheim team had won. So it was the Sverresborg U19 team. So shout out Sverresborg U19. You know, like boys 2000 and boys 1999.
Much respect. But it seems to me that these young players, especially, or players that have played for you, have really big respect for you. What would you say has been your coaching philosophy?
Well, as I said earlier, coaching is about, connecting, okay? And you are who you are, okay? So, for example, when it comes to coaching styles, you have to be who you are. So, players understand honesty, okay? So, like, if you're not a yeller, don't be yelling and trying to be a drill sergeant when that's not your personality. It's like you have to coach according to your personality. And then for me, I think it comes down to a mutual respect. When I think that you can work hard and have fun. Like I told you the story about the difference between having a coach who was an ex-Marine and our practices were like drill. And then I had Chuck Daly, who was like a combination. You have to, practice the little small things that are important to winning, but he made it fun. So I think my coaching style is more a combination of the two. I think the challenges here in Norway is our limited practice time. So you have to have a combination of, you can't be just doing drills and not having game type situations. Okay, so I think I developed a coaching style where I tried to combine conditioning with playing and with skills, but that's my own particular style, and I know how to do it, okay? Because, for example, in my early coaching career, it was quite common that you take the last 15 minutes for conditioning. You run suicides and sprints and you do all this like really hardcore. And that's the old school way it was done, And I developed over time, like, okay, I'm going to mix my conditioning in with shooting drills and throughout the practice, so they don't know that I'm kicking their ass. But I got the stopwatch. So I think that was one thing, is that I think, you can only gauge what kind of feedback you get from your players, and I always felt like the greatest respect that a player could show me, and the greatest compliment, is to come up after a practice and say, "Hey, coach, that was a great practice." Okay, and that says it all. What made practice fun for me, I try to do it for my players, okay? And as I said, players that are motivated, that want to achieve, they want to be pushed. They want to work hard. Okay, they want to come off the court at the end of the practice feeling, hey, we had a good practice because we're better, and you're better individually and you're better as a team. So I would hope that has something to do with it, because I can only do so much. You lay a foundation, and then the players are the ones that say, okay, we believe in what we're doing, and we take it to the next level. So whatever the level, I think that has a part to do with it. So I have the greatest, humility when players say positive things about me. And it's a two-way street. So, yeah.
Do you have any stories from your national team coach time?
Yeah, I sure do. No, the national team, I did it for like 9 years, and I coached probably the greatest, one of the best ever national teams back in 1988, because we actually were in the Olympic qualification, and we had names that a lot of younger generation won't know, but Håkan Østerfjord, Ivan Grunley, and Arild Beck, and Peter Netley, and we went down to that tournament and really performed. However, we had like the Spanish U22 team that came up here for a couple of friendship games, and we played in Bergen on a Sunday, and we were going to play in Oslo on Monday. And the common challenge for Norwegian basketball is that the intensity level, the conditioning level, wasn't quite up to the level of some of the more basketball-oriented countries, like the Spanish U22 team. These are like some serious athletes and serious talent. So we're down 30 points at halftime. And I come into the locker room and I rant and I rave. And this is my younger coaching days, just mean, like, what the hell? We're going to lose by another 30 points in the second half. And we lost the game by 60 points. So all that yelling and screaming and, come on, we're going to lose by another 30 points. But it was the reality. You couldn't do anything about it. And the next day, the next game, and Maderud, Holland, and Oslo, we won by 12. So that was the talent level of the team. But it took that one game to So that was one of my stories, halftime, I thought the sarcasm was going to work.
What's next for you? Do you have any plans now, or?
I'm happily retired. Retirement is a plateau in life. I'm often asked by different people, like, oh, how come you don't go back to the States? And why are you living in Trondheim? It's because, I come and go as I please. That's what retirement is. Every day is a holiday. A long career, coaching and is a 24/7 job. It's like you don't leave it. You don't leave it at the gym because you have to prepare and you have to analyze. And so to be successful requires a 24/7 commitment. And as I said, when I realized that the last game of all this, all the playground, all the high school, all the college, all the professional, that is the last time that you're in a game. And you know what I'm saying, a game. Game time. Game time has that something, spirit to it. That's why it was an emotional moment for me, because it was like, I have to leave it behind. I'm not going to be hanging around doing something that I spent a career doing. So the answer to the question is, I have hobbies and interests. I like to read, and just being able to sit in a chair and read and not have to, I got to be at practice later. And, I got to be up the next morning. So it's a whole, like you said, I'm blessed to be at this point in my life and still be, relatively healthy and have my wits about me, because I can't, I am 73 years old, but then I've lived the life of an athlete. So I've always been around the gym. I've always been around young people. And, so I think that has been a part of making me who I am now, so that I can enjoy this point in life. Personally, I've always kept my personal life separate, from my professional life. But I love, I'm an outdoorsman. I like to have free time, to do that type of thing. And again, like I said, reading, I love history. And I think that's one thing we've talked about. Young people, they don't read like we used to read, in my opinion. There's so much to reading, like pages coming to life, and that's a real time-consuming thing. So that's just one example. But the important thing is that there's not that the next day, the next game. There's always something more when you're working. So when you reach the point where you can actually retire, then it's a wonderful plateau in life. And as I said, if you can get there and still be relatively healthy in your body and mind, then it's a blessing.
Appreciate a lot this conversation, all those story. Thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Coach Ron, thank you so much. We have been blessed to talk to you today. Thank you very much for everybody following us. Continue following us. Peace out, party people.